Hello, booktube. I'm Scott.
Are you sure about that? You sound a bit confused.
I was waiting for you to introduce you.
I'm now.
We are Gunpowder, Fiction and Plot, and today we're going to talk about Victorian books, and we're going to talk about LGBTQIA plus representation and authors in Victorian times.
There's way more letters in that acronym that are represented in the literature.
Yes, especially in Victorian times.
Yeah.
Where the term lesbian, the first letter, wasn't even well known in at like the beginning of the Victorian era.
What? They can have pleasure without a penis?
Yeah, it was
shocking.
And so when we were doing,
I just can't see.
You just can't see. You're gonna have to clean your glasses.
Yeah.
When we were doing the research for our Victorian quiz notes, like we'll either that's coming soon or we'll put a link below depending on when we're scheduling it. But we found a lot of Queen Victorian quotes, and one of the quotes that I found interesting but a little bit alarming was, "I don't know of any woman who would want to do that," and that was in response to women marrying women, and like
she did seem to think that women getting married in general was a bad idea.
she just seemed to be a bit anti-people, didn't she?
Yes, but there was definitely the implication that she thought that women got the raw end of that deal.
Yes.
Because we do.
She didn't see being a lesbian as a valid escape either, did she?
No.
Not that I think that is. I don't think there's many lesbians that go, "I thought about marrying men and it didn't seem viable," so like I imagine that's not the path.
Or many lesbians that are like, "I really like girls, but let me check with the Queen."
Well, if you are a closeted lesbian but the Queen said no, let us know in the comments.
Oh, that's horrible. Okay, so what we're actually talking about is representative reading in Victorian literature. But basically, it's not like you can go to good old Google and say, "Where's all the homoerotic Victorian novels?"
It's not easy. Like, we thought that this would be relatively easy. We'd do some research. We'd figure out who was gay and straight and bisexual and all of those things. Like you can do that now, and it's a little bit difficult to do that now because your authors aren't as famous. But you think you'd be able to figure out the sexuality of Victorian authors?
Yeah. I mean, certainly after reading Dorian Gray and just the blatant male-to-male relationships that were going on. Like, it's in cloaked language, but if you think they're all straight men and you've read that book, then
read it again. But there are other relationships in novels where we need to be checking the sexuality of it. And just a novel that I have been reading this weekend, Desperate Remedies by Thomas Hardy. There's a lot of things going on there which I could interpret as straight fraternal friendship between two women, or I could interpret as lesbian.
We also have to be, you've got to be careful too, because something that is not really prevalent in our modern day society, but which was encouraged even in Victorian society, was romantic relationships between same-sex people, particularly among women, because the idea that that would become sexual was just so foreign to the way they thought about female sexuality that it wasn't considered super scandalous if you loved your sister, like you loved your female friend. And it wasn't considered to be innately sexual.
So what would a romantic relationship that wasn't sexual, would it be exactly the same as a married relationship, but...
Well, I mean, I think for anyone who knows me well, me and Kate is actually a really good example of a romantic relationship that is not at all sexual. We get everything from each other that you would get from a partner, except we don't do the sex thing because neither of us like girls.
Okay. So emotional support.
Yeah, and there's a difference between being friends with someone and being in a relationship with someone. You know, like...
Well, yeah, so you and Kate would go out for coffee together because you would, but that is something you would do with friends. But you and Kate will talk in detail at length about...
Yeah, Kate probably knows the inside of my brain as well as you do when you're my husband.
Yes. Yes. I have often wondered whether you were, like, angling for some sort of communal living.
That would be awesome. Let's all live together.
We'll have 4 bedrooms. John and I will be on the outside. You and Kate will be on the middle of adjoining walls. Yeah, but yeah. So that's the sort of thing that was going on. So it is hard to...
Yeah, it wasn't considered unusual for women to live together and even share a bed because it was not...
And so that's, I mean, I know this is pre-Victorian, but that's what happened with Cassandra Austen and Jane Austen. They shared a bed, and later people have interpreted that to be some sort of lesbian thing, but they're sisters, so the idea that they're lesbian is a bit pushing it.
I don't think it's a weird concept for women. Like, I think most of us have a girlfriend who is, you know, our best girlfriend, and if you don't, you should get one, because they're awesome. But I think most of us have that really close relationship with another woman that you go to for understanding and connection in a way that men just don't do. And it's not sexual. Why does everything have to be sex?
Actually, it sort of says a lot about the 21st century, or even the human race's obsession with sex. Like,
yeah, and also like lineage and whose babies is whose and all that sort of stuff, that we centralize the marital relationship above all other relationships and all other kinds of love. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
and definitely. As we were researching this, I was looking at Alfred Tennyson, and the discussion of him and his friend, I forget his first name, Hallam. The outpouring of grief that Tennyson, in Tennyson's poem In Memoriam, when Hallam died, is considered to be evidence that they were in a homosexual relationship. And reading that poem, yes, there are definitely parts of it that I think possibly do point to a sexual relationship. He does talk about having an empty side of the bed and things like that sound a bit raunch, but equally could be about an asexual romantic relationship, which I think is really, it's just, I think the absence of that kind of relationship in our modern society is actually even more interesting to me than the closeting of homosexual relationships in the Victorian era.
There's significantly more single people in the Victorian novels that I read than there is in today's society.
Certainly, that we know.
And certainly later in life, you know, like once you get to a certain age, the idea that you're not coupled up is really weird. Like, to not be coupled up at our age, you are a divorcee or something, which is usually a horrible way to look at society. Like, if you are...
You shouldn't have to pair up, and you shouldn't be made to feel like you've been rejected if you don't find someone you want to live with.
But let's bring this back to being queer in Victorian. What we're saying with this is that to retrospectively look back at same-sex relationships that people have and determine whether they were sexual or not sexual is incredibly difficult and incredibly hard to...
And we'll never really know.
We're really guessing a little bit.
Yeah.
on top of that, it was in the 1860s, in the middle of the Victorian era, where the crime of sodomy was not decriminalised, but if you were caught doing that, you were killed.
Yeah. And acts of lesbian sexuality were not included in the one of the articles I read said that they weren't included in the sodomy laws because they didn't want to advertise that it was an option to women who didn't already know. So the lesbians got off easy because everyone thought that they wouldn't know how to do it.
I find that really interesting. Like, if you are a lesbian, did you know from like a really young age, or did it like occur to you when you were like 18? You're like, oh.
I think women are just as sexual as men, and the idea that they
or gay, or
yeah.
Even if you're straight, when did you realise you were gay, straight, or in the middle? Did you just assume that, or were you attracted to somebody when you were 3, or did it take you until your early 20s to figure that out, or even later?
I think that's different for everyone. I think your sexual awakening or whatever is...
I had a friend in high school and her dad was gay, and he only realised like after he had a family, and always
Did he only realise, or did he only say?
Well, I didn't know them that well, but I never met the dad, but yeah. So anyway, so what we're saying is that relationships are hard, and that you not only would you make them look like they were friendships, but that if you didn't, you could be killed.
Yeah. So.
And even if you weren't killed, if you came out as gay, often you would be imprisoned, have your career ended, all sorts of horrible things that, The story of Oscar Wilde and his sort of downfall is really fucking horrible. Yeah.
Because he was closeted for a long time, and then he ended up in a relationship with a man who refused to hide his love for Oscar Wilde, which is really lovely. Except that his father, not Oscar Wilde, his partner's father, hated Oscar Wilde's guts and reported him, and he's the reason that Oscar Wilde ended up doing hard labour.
Oh, jeez.
And the abuse he suffered while he was in prison for being a homosexual was basically what everyone says he died from. And his creativity and his art after he was released was not as Oscar Wilde-y.
Oh, no.
So he really was broken by this horrid man who couldn't accept his son
being gay.
Yeah. Horrible.
What a horrible, toxic father.
Yeah. And what a horrible, I guess theoretically he could have been put to death. So hard labour is, I guess, a win.
He should feel happy for that.
We've been so horrible to homosexuals in our history. It's disgusting.
It is. And one of the things I found when we were researching this is I went through a whole bunch of authors. I just found a list of authors, and I just simply decided, rather than looking for gay authors, would look for authors and check whether they were gay or not. And I found it easier.
That sounds like the long way to do it.
Well, I just couldn't find gay authors, so I had to resort to harder work. And I found it easier to find women who were considered gay, and like being reclaimed by the gay movement rather than...
Well, I definitely think that there's a few reasons for that, which we've already uncovered. Like, they're not going to get put to death if they get caught, so they're going to be more open. They're not going to hide it as much. And that acceptable female romantic relationship at the time, I think, like, if you were a lesbian, what a great cover.
Yes. I would. If I was a lesbian in Victorian England, I would definitely be going, it's a friendship and we share a bed together and...
Big deal.
Yeah.
And at the time, big deal, which is, I think, is lovely and great, and that should be a thing now, but...
Yeah. So there were, this was, though, known about same-sex relationships, and you can definitely see, like, in Dorian Gray, for example, and Dorian Gray's definitely the most famous of the works, the Victorian gay works, I guess.
Well, because he went to jail, so it's one of the few where there's actual, definitive. He was definitely doing the sodomy.
Reading that work and knowing that he was.
A horrible word.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
But is that what is the technical word? Is that the technical word? Does it matter? Anal sex. I guess that's the technical word, isn't it?
I don't know. Do you want to Google it?
I don't know. I was just trying to be PC. Because sodomy is such a biblical word, isn't it?
And then it's the name of the crime, which makes me think. I can't imagine too many.
Yeah, God
people
threw a city down for that.
I can't imagine too many people are like, "Hey, you want to go back to my house for some sodomy?" I don't think that's the raunch way to say it.
Maybe. But yes. Yeah. Yeah, but sodomy definitely seems like the nasty way of doing, making love. Two guys making love. That's the nice way. Two guys sodomizing each other is the...
Yeah, it sounds like a bad news article.
They're in a bad mood when they're doing the second one. But, yeah. Anyway, but there was a lot of hints about it in works by people like Hardy, Elliott, and Dickens, where... There's same-sex couples in all of those authors' works that we would interpret as...
Well, it's not like homosexuals are a bloody 20th century invention. They've been,
Yeah, but what I'm saying is we could interpret the works of all of these people if we were looking for gay representation.
Yes.
That it's actually... all over the works of, and I've picked these three authors because I know there are examples in their work, but I don't remember the works of, say, Charlotte Bronte as well, and I don't know whether there are examples.
Oh yeah, and if you picked it up and read it looking for it, would you find it?
Exactly, yeah. And I know, like Jane Austen, there's definitely same-sex couples in Jane Austen's work, so even going back pre-Victorian, it exists. So it is hard, but it was also so repressed. Like there definitely seems to be that whole horrible army mentality of don't ask, don't tell. Like we can hint about it, but if you make it too obvious, we're going to ruin your career.
Yeah.
Which is again horrible. So it is very hard, and it's not like when we were doing the research for all of it, we weren't just researching. LGBT plus, we were researching people of color and all that, and it's really easy to tell when an author is a person of color. But
the erasure of people of color in literature of that time, certainly from England and the colonies, is near complete.
There is very, very few examples of people of colour in Victorian era. Yeah, exactly. And retrospectively, a lot of these people that we're going to talk about at the end of this video, successful, and then we found out they were gay.
Potentially. We'll never have proof, really.
Yeah.
I find it... There's definitely a huge homosexual erasure in the period, because obviously... anyone who they were in hiding, but I find it really interesting the way that there was a coded way to speak about it. And
and even this is really prevalent in what I know about homosexuality in London after this, things like Polari as a language that they would speak and all that, these underground codes where you would think somebody speaking another language would be pretty obvious a giveaway. But
I mean, in a melting pot like London, even then, would it?
Well, I don't know. Would Polari just sound like Yiddish or something?
Polish, or just a language you don't speak?
If you don't speak it, but I think Polari is, it's English with words added to it. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't speak it.
Yeah, I don't speak it either.
Can't imagine many people of our generation do, which is probably awesome.
Yeah, but also a little bit sad. Like,
yeah,
is
sense of a language.
it good or is it bad? I
mean,
don't
it's
know.
good because it means they're not hiding and persecuted and
I wonder, this would actually be really interesting. I wonder how many Polari words have actually come into English. But
who has studied the etymology of all that Polari? That would be super
that would
interesting.
be super interesting. But I do know that when two languages collide, say when we've had like historically an army has invaded or something, that as a general rule, the invading army keeps their language and the subjugated race.
Yeah, but we always steal words.
Yeah.
I say we because I'm white and therefore we dominated.
We did usually win.
Like assholes.
Yeah.
Not because I think we're winners.
It's things like I've got English, Scottish, and French blood in me. So when I see like an English and French or an English and Scottish war, I'm like, whose side am I on?
Yeah, whereas I'm Latvian and Welsh, so, you know.
I didn't have too many disagreements, those great Latvo-Welsh.
I think they had plenty of disagreements. They just unfortunately didn't ever win. ever. Oh, Russia, you want to take all our farmland? Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, I didn't have too many Cumbro-Latvian conflicts.
Yes, yeah, not with each other.
I mean, shall we defend against the English, or shall we put ourselves on a crusade to
Latvia?
Let's invade Riga instead. Yeah. Anyway, shall we talk about? We've got 5 authors who we do know are gay.
Ish. We know ish.
Well, I think we know that all 5 of these are gay.
Do we? All right, shoot.
Yeah. So the first author that we're going to discuss is Amy Dilwyn. So Amy Dilwyn, she lived with a woman, and Olivia, and she called her Olivia or Olive. Maybe it was Olive. I should have written that down as a note, shouldn't I?
Yeah. Yes, if you're going to tell the story.
But yeah, she was definitely had romantic feelings. She
referred to her as wife in her
called her a wife, yeah.
diary or journal or whatever.
And she has 3 books published by, I think it's called Homno Press. She has The Rebecca Riots, Jill, and A Burglary. And these are 3 books that are completely different sounding, which is actually so awesome that an author is writing. The Rebecca Riots are a Welsh historical riot, and she wrote a story detailing them, like a historical fiction, but that was an event from her lifetime.
Sounds interesting.
I guess that would be like us writing about a story within COVID or September the 11th or something. Then the next one is Jill, which is a coming-of-age story about a woman who is in love with another woman, and I haven't actually read these novels. I've bought 2 of them, and I'm very eager to read them, but
not got to them yet.
The last one is called A Burglary, which is apparently a comedy. So we've got a historical fiction, a coming-of-age romance, and a comedy.
Sounds awesome.
So awesome. And I have seen Katie at Books and Things review Jill, and she absolutely loved her, which is a pretty big thumbs up.
You and Katie.
I must say, Katie's recommendations are either 100% perfect or just completely wrong.
You really, really agree on everything, except for that, I reckon, 3% of things where you disagree so strongly. It's so funny to watch a Katie video. It's very enjoyable.
She is one of the booktubers I think has the tastes that
It's very similar to you until it's not.
The next one, we've already discussed Oscar Wilde quite a bit, but we've put Oscar Wilde on the list because he has obviously The Portrait of Dorian Gray. He also has a lot of plays, The Importance of Being Earnest, A Woman of No Importance. But Oscar Wilde tends to be a little bit of a misogynist in his Well, you can definitely interpret it as a misogynist.
Yeah, I imagine he didn't have much use for women.
But I think that that's actually him making a point about male and male relationships.
Yeah.
Which is not the nicest way of saying it, but is actually an interesting political literary device.
He writes beautifully.
Probably the most quotable author.
You and your comparative language.
I just love.
He's a very quotable author.
I love just snippets of his work. It's individually beautiful without the context of the rest of the work.
Yeah.
All right. So now the next author I want to talk about is Amy Levy. Her most famous novel is called The Romance of the Shop. The reason that Amy Levy is a bisexual author, which I actually think finding a bisexual Victorian author is even a bigger deal, because if you were bisexual, surely, it's so much easier. If you're bisexual today, it's so much easier just to be straight and, live straight.
Yeah.
And
not that you would necessarily do that, but
yeah, I mean, look, everybody makes choices and no judgment, because life's hard. Whatever you do to make it easier, but whatever you do to make yourself happy as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's a bisexual and she's a Jewish author. And the other thing I like, because I guess we tend to think of Jewish people today as just like we do Italian or Irish. This, they're a white race and they've got a culture, but actually they've got such a horrible history of racism against them.
An oppression, yeah, for sure.
Oppression. And, it wasn't just the Holocaust. There was so much against them. But since the Holocaust is sort of like the thing that has maybe motivated us to treat them a little bit more like human beings. But in the 1880s, when Amy Levy was writing, they were not treated like that.
No, they certainly weren't treated
so we have a bisexual Jewish feminist writing a novel, and
she's awesome. She's my favorite person already.
That just sounds so amazing.
Yeah.
All right, now who have you got?
Alfred Tennyson, who I've already spoken about. He was also bisexual. His love for women is quite well documented. But there's definitely there's lots of bits of his writing that are a little bit homoerotic, I guess.
Yeah.
And then there's the big sort of in memoriam after the loss of his close friend. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that sounds lovely. Now, the last writer we're gonna discuss. This is my favourite story. The writer's name is Michael Field, which is a nom de plume. Michael Field was better known as Catherine Harris Bradley and Edith Emma Cooper. It is a writing collaboration of two women who were lovers.
Yay!
And when Michael Field, he was a playwright, when he released his first, when they released their first...
Yeah, I think they.
When they released their first play, they were described by critics as the best playwright since Shakespeare. Unfortunately, Catherine and Edith let slip to Robert Browning, one of their friends and a very famous playwright of the time as well, that they were Michael Field, and he let that slip to the media.
Oh, he let it slip.
Slip, whether it was accidental or on purpose.
He was an asshole. Yeah,
yeah,
sounds like a stupid man.
Whether he was dumb or mean, I don't know, and whatever. But it got out that they were there. But they've written 40 plays together, all of which can be got on Project Gutenberg or something. But I just thought that was such a lovely story that
is really lovely, and it's really sad that they're not in print.
It is. And I thought the other thing that I thought was quite interesting about this is they both deliberately picked a male nom de plume because, and same reason that George Elliott picked a male nom de plume.
I mean, if you're going to pick a nom de plume.
Yeah. And, you know, it even still happens now. But I guess, like, we have so many female writers now that...
Yeah, but they're marketed differently to male writers and...
Yeah.
And that sort of thing. So there's still a reason.
But yeah, if you know, just do an experiment, think of your 5 favourite writers who are still producing books, and think of your 5 favourite writers who are over 100 years old, right? And I bet you that you have a higher percentage of males in the over 100 years old group. And you know,
there's always more men on my list than I think there is.
Yeah. But, you know, it's just... That's how... But anyway, George Elliott and Michael Field both deliberately changed their names to men in order to better help with the success of...
I think that's lovely.
Their work. So, and I think, you know, if society is broken, sometimes you just need to use it how it's broken for your own personal gain. You know.
Says the business owner and a capitalist.
Well, we're just...
No, it's true.
Life
you clearly
is hard.
actually believe that.
Life is hard. Anything you can do to get
You're
ahead.
a giant commie and we run a business.
Yeah. I am a giant commie and I actually am.
I like it when he's amused that I know the truth about him.
Anyway, have you have you read any queer authors who are Victorian?
Tell us about all the raunchy bits in your Victorian literature in the comments.
Anything you've got to add? Any closeted gay people or anything you know about?
Not from Victorian times.
From Victorian
Please don't out people who are alive.
Don't out.
For goodness sake.
I meant characters in... I didn't even mean authors. I meant...
Jeepers.
I meant tell us about a gay character in a book that may not have been... gay. Yeah. Anyway, like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back with another video at some point. Bye.